Hi, this is Bev Holden from the Clear Thinking Partnership, and this is Collaborate Live. This is the seventh episode in the series, and there's a slight twist to this one. So I'm actually joined by two guests today. I'm joined by Julie Drybrough and Sarah Boyd, respectively from Fuschia Blue and from Boyen. So I'm going to be talking to them because Julie I've known for a little while, so I think I was introduced to Julie on Twitter. And then met her in person, and so we've got to know a little bit about what each other does over the last wee while. And Sarah I met yesterday, and it's just kind of one of those weird twists of fate where, having invited Julie to be a guest in the Collaborate Live series, Sarah and Julie happen to be working together on the same day, so it's very fortuitous for us that we get the chance to interview both of them. So we're going to be exploring, as we have in the rest of the series, all about collaboration, what it means to Julie and to Sarah, and really take it from there. So that's a very brief introduction. So good morning to Julie and Sarah. Hello.
Good morning.
Morning.
How are you?
Really good, thanks. It's great to see you both. I'm going to get straight into the questions. So I want to start by talking to you both about your experiences of collaboration, the positive ones that you've had, and what you think the key ingredients were. What were the factors that were in place that made the collaborative experience such a good one? So over to you.
So we talked about this a little bit last night, because you very kindly sent us through the questions, which was good and collaborative all by itself. And when you start, or when I started talking about how many people I collaborated with, it was like, oh, actually, I collaborate with loads of, I seem to do lots of collaboration, it's lots of bits and pieces. And one of the most positive ones, and one of the ones that's like most recent for me, is a collaboration I'm doing with John Bartlett from Project Libero, and we are working on mentally healthy workplaces. So John does a huge amount of work on mental health, with individuals and with organisations, and he very kindly asked me if I would come and do some work with him to a group of HR people around what it is to have your workplace to be sort of more mentally healthy, more aware of like mental health in the workplace. And I was thinking about that. It's been a really positive experience because I've kind of brought the stuff that I know around dialogue and organisations and working with people to help people kind of communicate better and have better conversations. John's brought the stuff that he knows really well around what it is to work with and look after people with mental health issues and the sensitivities that sit around that and the types of adjustments that you might need to make. And I don't know much about his area of expertise, and he knows a fair amount about my area of expertise, to be fair. But there was something about when we came together, it was the third entity where you actually think, right, well, we've got something here that, you bring this, I bring that, and the sum of the parts was somehow, better, different. There was something quite exciting about it. And what I loved about working with him was like the actual collaboration part at the beginning, the design part at the beginning required lots of kind of knocking ideas around and sort of sitting about and going, right, what do you think about this and what do you think about that, and we could do this and we could do that. And that kind of creative process at the beginning was it's really exciting, and it's quite scary as well because it could kind of go anywhere. So and we ended up, I was saying to Sarah this morning, like John and I ended up at one point doing stuff on a Google document at the same time, so we were like writing into each other, and we had moments where he was, like I'd write stuff and he would kind of like correct my spelling, and I would put in caps lock, stop correcting my spelling! And I think like, that's part of the collaboration as well, the kind of trust where he was kind of going, right, okay, well, that bit you might want to correct, and I could just go, no, actually no, not right now, I'm not ready for that. So the relationship that you need to have and the trust that you need to have between each other, I think is a key part of how it works and what makes it positive. And I think what worked in that instance, and like I say, there've been many instances that I can think of, but thinking about the one with John particularly, is that we knew each other fairly well beforehand. And when we translated that into a workspace, there were things that just kind of flowed. And we knew each other well enough that we could sort of knock it about a little bit and be fairly robust with each other, and not too polite. So yeah, it's kind of that stuff.
Yeah. And for me, I have only just recently started to collaborate with people outside of an organisational space. So I was sort of sitting there thinking this morning, I'm not sure I've got that many positive experiences. And I was trying to unpick it a little bit as to why I couldn't come up with this thing where I'd collaborated really well and created something brilliant. And actually, for me, now's the first time that I bring my whole self to work. It sounds a bit weird, but in my past with my companies, I've had like a work self and a home self, my real self. And it's only now that I'm being my whole self at work that my collaborations could become a bit easier. So looking back, I'm like, I wasn't fully there. I wasn't fully in the collaboration. I was doing my work self stuff. So had a bit of a this morning. So yeah, it was a nice start to the day for me.
Excellent. That's really interesting. I like what you said, Julie, about the robustness of the interaction with John, and I'm also really intrigued by what you've said, Sarah, about bringing your whole self to work, and how do we encourage people to do that when actually I've noticed that working independently, it's much easier to collaborate with other people now than maybe it was before. So how do we help people in organisations to make that transition? Did you have any conversations about that?
Probably. I guess for me, one of the things that I struggled with in finding jobs is aligning my values to companies. So now it's much clearer. I have my own set of values and I can choose the people that I work with. And before, I felt like I was in somebody else's values a little bit. So I found it harder to bring my whole self to work.
You raised a good question yesterday. So we obviously had a pre-chat before we did this yesterday, and that question yesterday about, well, when you're in organisations, sometimes you are kind of forced to collaborate. You have to work with people, because that's what you're there to do. That's the nature of the job, the nature of the organisation. And there's a kind of a luxury sometimes, I think, working outside of organisations where you can, to some extent, choose who you collaborate with. You kind of know who's going to be good to work with, who you will work well with, who's going to bring out the best of you. And you don't always get that opportunity internally in the same way. And we kind of kicked that around a little bit this morning about, like, we've both had examples of working with people in organisations that actually we wouldn't choose to collaborate with because, like, we don't get them, they don't get us, or like they just drive us nuts, or we know that we're driving them nuts because, like, I'm not very structured. And if someone's looking for a beautiful linear kind of what is your outcome or purpose for this, it's going to take me a good 20 minutes to articulate that. I'm going to go, well, round and round and round, and that's going to drive somebody else nuts. But if I know somebody really well, and I'm not in an organisational context where it's like, you have to deliver this immediately, I think you have time to kind of work through those things and get to know each other a bit better. And then, I don't know, there's something about the time it takes to be forgiving of each other and to kind of get to know each other's quirks and foibles. But having thought about it, Bev, like, I am convinced that there are some people in the world who genuinely could not work with me, and I genuinely could not work with. Not because I don't like them, but because, like, you put us in a workspace together and it's going to be like, I have a really strong view on how this needs to go. And it'll be like, okay, bang. So there's something in all of this I think is really interesting.
And it's hard in an organisation because you don't have that ability to go, actually, I don't think we can work together, because you just have to get it done sometimes. So I think for me, having understanding of myself and how I behaved now in the collaborations of, was I being my true self or was I not, and what's my impact on the situation and the people around me, having that bit of understanding, if I went back into an organisation, I think would enable me to collaborate a bit better and probably be a little bit more forgiving of the people on the other side of the collaboration, because they might be in exactly the same situation that I am. So yeah.
I like, you've both talked about forgiving, and I think that's a really important factor. You kind of have to accept that, well, forgiveness, it's just a forgiveness thing. I can't really define it in any other way. And I think, well, when you've seen both perspectives, when you've been inside a corporate entity, or a private, public sector institution, and then you come onto the outside. Having both of those perspectives, I think, is really valuable. So I think we're really fortunate when we've had both of those experiences. And you are making me think about that, how we help that happen, how we help that really good collaboration happen in an organisation, in spite of the fact there's a massive drive to achieve a task and get a particular outcome. Because there has to be something very natural and genuine about the way in which the collaboration evolves, rather than the kind of forced fun and the forced team working that we talked about yesterday as well. So yeah, that's some really interesting ideas, I think, that come out from the conversations you've been having. So it can. Sorry, what were you going to say, Julie?
I was going to say, like, I'm a big advocate about thinking about the time that it's going to take people to get to know each other in organisations. So before you start a big project, do get people to spend some time together, a day together, but the informal time that people spend together, I think, is really important. I mean, it's really important for me. So my lived experience of being both in and out of organisations is having time to have a cup of coffee with somebody and kind of get to know who they are and where they're coming from. Gives me back so much time when I'm in the project, because we already have some shared understanding about, you know, where each other's coming from. And it just, for me anyway, it's that sort of stitch in time saves nine thing. You know, you do the work over here, you get people to sort of know each other and talk to each other a little or a lot. But I think we undervalue the informal in organisations in terms of like how that can impact on the way people collaborate and succeed and manage to give a good output. I think so often we don't do enough of that, and the time in the informal is, you know, for me, that's key.
Yeah, and I think having had conversations yesterday about the sort of team building events, the essence of them is right, because they're trying to get people together to build that stuff, but actually it's the informal bit that is far more powerful than sort of getting people in a room and getting them to do these sort of forced activities where they're still in their work mode. It's taking them out of the environment, getting them to have a cup of coffee, relax, be a little bit more like, this is actually me and I feel a bit more comfortable, and then build whatever you need to collaborate on from there.
Excellent. Okay, that leads me on to my next kind of question, which is around how collaboration plays a part in the work that you do now. And obviously, the fact that you're sat in the same room together suggests collaboration is playing a part. And Julie, you've talked about your work with John. So tell us a bit more about why collaboration is important to the work that you guys are doing.
Yeah, and I sort of had this picture of, I've got like a continuum of collaboration in my head. So I have like at one end I have the sort of individual people that I go to collaborate on my thoughts and bounce ideas off, through to the collaborations I do as a company with another company, with a client, sort of the big stuff. And actually for me, working on my own, the key part is actually talking to real human beings and having that contact, because when you're home working a lot of the time and in isolation, that's really important. So yeah, it ranges from, am I just talking sense on one end of my collaboration continuum, through to, are we building, creating, doing something solid and with a really clear output? And so my collaboration sort of flexes on a day-to-day basis depending on what I'm doing and what I need. So yeah, so I have this sort of continuum in my head of collaboration.
Yeah, and I think for me, I was saying to Sarah like this morning that having someone to talk with really helps me kind of articulate my stuff, and that's suitably vague. That's Fuschia Blue vague, by the way. That's like that kind of stuff. But I often know lots and lots of things, and having someone to talk with and collaborate with helps me often structure my thinking, or pull in, well, actually I know this and I know this, and there's also, you know, this might be useful, but I equally get that back. So like the way we've been working over the last couple of days, you know, we have done the classic facilitator, you know, we've got stuff up in the flip charts and we've got post-it notes, but a lot of what we've been doing is just sitting going, right, well, you know, there was this example in this team, and like this is what I noticed about it, and what I would like to think about is something over here. So we've got theories up there, we've got real stories up there, and what we're trying to do is collaborate on building an offering. Like we're trying to, what we want to do going forward is look at how we experience organisations and people in organisations, and look at what can we offer into that. Not have not kind of go around chasing clients going, right, we can help you, but actually say, well, this is how we can help you. And I think I have always struggled with articulating what Fuschia Blue can offer. And actually through collaboration, I'm finding articulating that strengthens. And there is something about, sort of strength in numbers. And there is something about just feeling like, okay, this is, I'm not the only one who thinks this. There's somebody else who thinks this, but they think it a little bit differently, and it sort of challenges a little.
Yeah.
So I think it's that for me. It's around, difference and challenge, but really, really helpfully so.
Yeah, I talk a lot about connecting the dots when I talk to people. So through collaboration, it's like I've had this thought and I've heard someone say this, and then I have collaborate with people and they bring more dots, and all of a sudden they sort of merge into this one big dot, and it becomes this sort of, and I love talking to people and collaborating, just having those sparks, and you're like, yes, that, and that relates to this, and now I see it from this angle, I've spun it that way around, and it's just energy. Collaboration creates far more energy than you can have sitting on your own with a post-it note, or even sometimes on a one-on-one, but it's that sort of multiple ideas of people around the room that are just, excited and energized by whatever you're talking about, that makes you go, yes, this is it, I like this, I like it.
Yeah.
I've got some very vivid images in my head now of the continuum and the big dot, and also the thing that there's language that you use, Julie, and you've used it consistently when we've talked, and I think it's really important, and it's about not talking to someone. You don't have people to talk to, you have people to talk with, and about stepping into a conversation. And I think that's a really subtle distinction. I've really noticed that that's something that you do, but I genuinely think that's important, and I don't think I'd thought about it until you impacted me with those words a few months ago when you said it. But it really, really resonated with me at that time, and still does. So I think that's a really important point about the collaboration as well. It's just about being with someone rather than, doing it to them. If you see what I mean?
Yeah, but one of the things that we have been talking about over the last couple of days is not to underestimate how tricky that is. Like to talk with somebody sounds kind of, I'm just going to sit and talk with them. But that going back to what we were saying at the beginning of this, your need for it being in relation to somebody, to kind of get to know them, to trust them, to be prepared to kind of surrender some of your own thinking and some of your own beliefs in order to really kind of connect with the other person. That's what's required of some of this stuff, and that I think is not necessarily easy. I'm not saying it's difficult particularly, but I think what I think, and for you to be able to influence me, I have to be open to that, and for me to be open to it, I need to kind of hold you in regard. I need to trust you. I need to believe that you're not going to stitch me up, that you're not going to nick my thinking, that you're not So there's a whole bunch that sits in those interactions. But I do think that you can, or I can, what I try and do when I work with clients is I try and make that step first. I try and show that I am to be trusted, that I am open, and that they can talk to me, and that I'm not, I think things should be this way, but I'm prepared to inquire into what they're thinking, not in a, well, I'm prepared to inquire into it, but really, I'm right. Genuinely kind of going, right, well, what is this that you're doing that I'm missing? And that kind of curiosity really helps people talking with. But I don't think it's necessarily easy, and particularly if you're not that fond of the person. It's really hard to talk to somebody, or talk with somebody, if you're just thinking, bit of an idiot. That definitely comes into it. And then you've got to kind of go, right, okay, let's just see what I can do with this. Maybe they're not an idiot, maybe it's...
Yesterday when we were talking, Julie mentioned a baton. So when you're having this conversation, it's not like I hold the baton and say something about me and then I pass it to you and you say something about you. It's about actually listening to what each other is saying, being curious about it, and then sort of building on it rather than just adding to it. Then I think there is a slight difference of I'm just going to add a little bit to your story rather than enhancing it or providing something extra or asking you those questions that make you build on it or think about it a bit differently. It's definitely what you were saying about the slight subtleties of the conversation.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, brilliant. So we're at that point where I need to ask that question about who you would love to collaborate with.
So we're laughing because one of the people we had in mind was Camilla from Kids Company, whose name I cannot pronounce. Okay, I have been trying to pronounce it and I just cannot kind of go there. But it's the lady who runs Kids Company, and the reason for that is her premise for working is about love. It's about showing people showing kids who have been in the most disadvantaged situations, role modeling what it is to be loved and to be open. And I think that really feeds into some of the things that we were saying before. And if you don't know her, go and Google her, because she's just fantastic. And she did something on either Desert Island Discs or the Saturday show on Radio 4 one week. And I fell in love with her. I was listening to her going, I love you. I just want to talk to you. I've never met her before. Yeah. Like, I really hope that she is what she sounds like, but yeah, no. Yeah. So for that, I would collaborate with her because she makes me kind of go, right, I want to be a better person.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because when we got to that question, I've been lucky I worked with a lady called Wendy Shooter, and we did a day at the Kids Company, so with some of the team that work there. And I was like, I met this amazing, I came across this amazing company, and they just talk about just treating children with love. That is the core basis for everything they do. And Julie was like, yes, her, I love her. It seems a bit odd that we've come up with the same person, but we genuinely had this conversation about it and realised that she's someone recently that we just have come across and is just phenomenal.
It's the downside of collaboration, like you just end up agreeing on everything.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We've come to the end of our time together. This has been the 7th episode in our series, and it's been so nice actually to do it differently. So I do like variety, and so having 2 guests instead of 1 has been a really interesting twist in the format. So I've been really pleased. So I'm delighted that you've both been able to join me, and that you both were willing to do it and made it happen. So thank you so much for being involved in Collaborate Live.
You're very welcome. Thank you for asking us. We got out of our pajamas.
We'll be back next week on I think it's on Friday again. So we'll let you know who it is that we're collaborating with next week. But this has been I can't say it. This has been Collaborate Live. I'm Bev Holden for the Clear Thinking Partnership. Thank you very much, and until next time, goodbye.
Thank you, Bev.